Hello, horror lovers, welcome to our channel. Please subscribe, as it is our biggest motivation. Let us know in the comments which city you are listening from. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. To understand this story, it is crucial to know that my father was never what anyone would call a good parent. He lacked the essential qualities that a mentally and emotionally healthy father should have. We lived in low-income housing, barely scraping by. He was told during high school that he would never be able to have children due to a car accident that left his reproductive organs damaged. However, life had other plans, and he went on to have 13 children during his 20s and 30s. Now, at 21, I know he has fathered at least 15 children, but when this story took place, I was 13 years old. Despite spending half of my time living with him week on, week off, I felt like I never truly knew my father. He rarely talked about himself, and I had only met one of my half-siblings, a much older sister. He never introduced me to the others, and I did not even know who her mother was. Much of my early memories with him have been buried deep in my subconscious, but this one event remains a vivid, confusing blur. I have since confirmed the details with my mother, piecing together a moment in my life I have only recently allowed myself to remember fully. It all started when I was 10. One evening, a stranger entered our small apartment. He was a young man, probably in his late teens or early 20s, and he claimed to be one of my father's long-lost children. I do not recall his name, but he left a mark on me, one that I would not fully understand until later in life. He asked if he could stay with us for a while, as he had just moved from California and needed a place to stay while getting back on his feet. The guy did not have much with him, just an old, beat-up laptop and a few items of clothing. He was rough around the edges, tall, skinny, with mid-length hair and a faint shadow of stubble on his face. From the moment he walked through the door, something about him felt off. Despite that, I thought he was cool. As a 10-year-old boy, I was mesmerized by his stories and the fact that he claimed to be a programmer working on a video game similar to Skyrim. It sounded fascinating, and he even showed me some of the things he had built so far. It seemed like a dream come true for a kid who adored video games. He was the cool older brother I had never known I had. We played Minecraft together for hours, creating incredible worlds and having competitions over who could build the coolest redstone contraptions. He was like an older sibling I could look up to at least for a while. My father, however, was always acting strange when it came to him. He told me this guy was family, that he was my brother, and I had to respect that. He even made me give up my bedroom so my new brother could stay in it, while I slept on the couch in the living room. Strangely, my father never let me back into my room once this guy moved in. There was always some excuse about why I could not go in there. For a few weeks, everything seemed fine on the surface. My brother and I spent most of our time gaming, and I was just happy to have someone around who seemed to care. He stayed with us for about a month, and things felt almost normal, at least until one night when everything changed. It was late, well past midnight. I had fallen asleep on the couch when I woke up to the sound of loud banging and my father's voice, filled with anger and panic, shouting from the other side of the apartment. The noise startled me, making me sit up straight in the dim glow of the television. For a moment, I was not sure if I was dreaming. The bangs were coming from the wall near my room, where my brother was staying. Suddenly, I saw him, my brother, burst out of the hallway, sprinting toward the front door with a knife in his hand. Behind him, my father was in full rage, chasing after him, yelling at him to get out. My heart pounded as I watched them disappear into the night, the door slamming shut behind them. I remember sitting frozen on the couch, unable to process what had just happened. When my father finally came back inside, he looked shaken, but tried to act like everything was under control. He asked if I was all right, and I just nodded, too scared to speak. He stayed up all night, sitting in the living room with me, keeping watch until dawn, as if guarding the apartment from whatever threat my brother posed. It was not until months later that I learned what had really happened that night. My father told me his version of the story, though he had a tendency to exaggerate, so I am not sure how much of it was true. According to him, the man who had been posing as my brother had tried to kill him. My father claimed that while he was asleep, the man had entered his room and stabbed him in the chest. Fortunately, my father had military experience from his time in the Middle East, and he reacted quickly. He fought off the attacker and chased him out of the apartment before he could hurt anyone else. My father told me that the man had been planning to harm me and my younger sister next. He said he had caught the guy just in time, saving us from a potentially horrific fate. The details were hazy, and part of me still struggles to believe the entire story, but the fear I felt that night was real enough. Later, I asked my mother about it, hoping she could shed some light on what had happened. She confirmed that my father had indeed been stabbed, though she downplayed the severity of the wound. As a nurse, she had patched him up herself, since he could not afford to go to the hospital. She described the wound as shallow but serious enough to require care. My mother also told me that the police had come by the apartment afterward. They informed her that the man who had pretended to be my brother was wanted in multiple states, California, Oregon, and Washington, for various crimes. I do not remember his name, and I never found out if he was caught. As I grew older, I came to realize how lucky we were that night. Anything could have happened, and the fact that my father was able to fight him off is something I cannot forget, despite all of my complicated feelings toward him. It was a moment that changed my perception of him, but it also deepened the sense of unease I had about our lives. Looking back, I now understand that my father was always surrounded by chaos, and it had a way of bleeding into my life, no matter how hard I tried to avoid it. The man who pretended to be my brother was just one of many people who drifted in and out of my father's world, bringing with them a whirlwind of danger and unpredictability. To this day, the memory of that night lingers in my mind, a reminder that not everything is as it seems. I do not know who that man really was or what his intentions were, but I learned a valuable lesson from the experience. Never let someone into your life just because they claim to be family. Sometimes, the people who seem the most trustworthy are the ones you need to be most cautious of. And so, the story ends with a simple piece of advice: do not trust strangers, even if they claim to be family.